Parks, and I am a fashion technologist and the CTO of Manufacturing New York. I also teach academically at Columbia. But I just want to talk to you, I had a bit of a strange journey getting to become a fashion technologist, which is sort of now a thing, I guess. But I went through various professions, mechanical engineering, exhibition design, installation design, ended up back at MIT for a PhD in computer science and robotics, all the while loving fashion a lot. Founded an algae biofuels company, and also when I got out of school founded a studio called Skinteractive, which was looking at fashion technology projects and the kind of future research before there was sort of such a thing that we know in the press as wearables. This is from my algae biofuels company, which you will see is actually important later in the research. But fundamentally, this is a conference about live, work, play, and I have always been this kid. Someone who is equally obsessed with the mechanics of their favorite blue car and pink hot pants with gold piping. And I didn't really understand how to get a career in these two combined things. So for someone who's good at math and physics and likes them, you do end up in these engineering tracks. And so this is the sort of maneuvering that I've been doing to sort of find my way back to being this. So I found Manufacturing New York, and what we are is a hybrid fashion incubator and accelerator for emerging brands, and also fashion tech companies, so startups on both sides. We have a manufacturing facility, full-scale production, you'll see that, and then an R&D technology lab, which is what I'm heading up and founding. Just a shout out to my team who are all hard at work in Brooklyn while I'm here. And you'll see that just from their backgrounds, it's really cross industry. This is not just about people from fashion. I represent tech. Our founder is from fashion, very deeply rooted in New York fashion. But we have a legal lawyer. We have someone who's an urban planner. We have media policy around Washington and advocacy around government. So this is really a kind of a larger infrastructure of kind of leaders needed across different sectors to make all this happen. So the reason that fashion is important, and one of the things that's kind of sometimes can be shocking to people, is how large the industry is and how much basically we can do good or we can do evil inside of these metrics. It affects lots of things about environmentalism. It affects things like labor policy and gender. And so there is the opportunity to really make a difference. And I think what's interesting for me is that middle two circles, the wearables is the fastest rising sphere within this, which is something that I'm interested in shaping. And then also the value of made in the USA. And something about reclaiming our domestic manufacturing. So there's various reasons to do that for kind of potentially ethical or sustainable reasons. But this one is actually quite interesting to think about it economically. This is a surprising fact to a lot of people in apparel manufacturing. The US is on track to achieve cost parity with China by the end of this year. And what happens is as China gets more expensive, we have this thing called the race to the bottom, and we're just looking for cheaper and cheaper markets. So it's not necessarily a solution if we can pull it back and do what we were originally doing well in domestic manufacturing. So the problems of the industry are kind of that the fashion industry is sort of still living in the 20th century, and we need to pull it into the 21st century. So inside of New York City, the infrastructure for fashion, since we've been outsourcing, has been slowly kind of crippling. The garment district, which used to have something like 80,000 workers and good jobs, is now down to about 15,000. The factories are splintered and everybody's losing their leases, and really the real estate is pushing everybody out of the city. But fashion remains a very vital part of New York City culture and economics, and we need to have some kind of balance to pull this infrastructure back into play, which is what we're trying to do. And then, like I said, this idea for fast fashion racing to the bottom of the market. We're going to run out of cheaper places to produce. We're going into sort of now places that are completely unstable, and this is really bad for the global economies for us to be chasing this down. Then I think we all know that higher education is very broken in this country, and there's lots of things that we can do inside of fashion to really bring back the apprenticeship model. It's the perfect environment for it. And to try to think about alternative paths for people who want a place in creative industries that don't want $200,000 worth of debt. Because this is what happens is people come out with so much debt, it's very hard to start to be an emerging label. And so you get sucked into a big company, and suddenly we have this consolidation across big companies, and we're not kind of promoting our individual talents and all the kind of edginess that is New York City. So these are what we're kind of trying to take on. This is our mission: to reawaken and rebuild America's fashion industry, foster the next wave of businesses, and create a transparent, sustainable global supply chain. So we do definitively have a social mission deeply embedded inside of our mission, although we are trying to very much create businesses that are economically viable. So how are we doing this? It's this integrated ecosystem, all inside of one space. We have the Fashion Incubator, which has product development attached to it. You can have your clothing made and sampled. And then we have contract manufacturing for you to do larger scale production and learn about the issues between how you get that actually made and into the world. We have the R&D lab, which I'm going to talk more about, which will help introduce new processes and new technologies and new materials. And then all of that, it kind of comes together through an e-commerce platform that runs through the building. So this is basically looking at how do we tap into this idea of innovation through proximity? Put everybody together in the same ecosystem. They're going to learn from each other. The designers are going to understand manufacturing better. You're going to save time. You're going to have efficiencies of infrastructure cross-platform. And this is the concept of next shoring. So instead of just reshoring our production, we're actually adding an innovative element into it. So it's better than just moving it back. Where are we doing this? This is Liberty View Industrial Plaza. This is in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. It's the largest floor plate of a single building in all 5 boroughs. It is absolutely massive and wonderful. Our landlord is one of our partners. He put $100 million of renovation into the building already post-Sandy, and now it's basically state-of-the-art, windows, HVAC, freight elevators, everything that you can imagine for a modern industrial facility. What we're setting up in there, 320,000 square feet of high-quality industrial space. Some of it will be our headquarters, which will split between the space for the fashion designers, the labs, and media, and then the rest of it going to contract manufacturers, which is across the board, cut and sew, accessories, denim, wash house, print, dye, everything that you can think of. You can enter the building with a napkin sketch and leave with a full production line coming out the door. Just to give you scale, this is a BQE. We also have the waterfront. We've got trains. It's kind of a unicorn in terms of transportation. It's 19 minutes to Broadway Lafayette on the D train because people think it's far away, and it's really not. So there's a lot of wonderful things coming together inside of this facility. And so now we're starting to think about how do we turn this into what we need to be. It's a big, empty, amazing building. And it has, it has the power to really be quite elegant. This is a recent dinner party. And so what we're working on is really what is the future of the factory? How do we want it to feel? And I think there's this idea that we want to bring back high-quality middle-class jobs in manufacturing and create a crossover between the way that it feels to work in a design studio. I'm sure so many of you know this, the great furniture, the kind of essence of creativity. How do we translate that into a factory when you have different kinds of needs? You have safety, you have noise, but where this is light industrial. So we just want to break down that barrier between the craft of manufacturing, which is absolutely a creative craft, and the kind of craft of design. So we're working with Ole Sanderson, who's an amazing kind of rising star in sustainable architecture. Some of you might know the Kickstarter headquarters in Greenpoint. That's him. So we're working on all different kinds of ideas, atypical ideas around sustainability and just sort of creating these in-between spaces. And then another really important part of the project is that we're a public-private partnership. So we just won a grant from the New York City EDC, which is amazing in terms of kind of building out our construction. And then we also were in the first class of the Obama grant for accelerator growth for kind of alternative industries doing work in kind of incubating young companies. And we're continuing on this path. We think it's really important to have private money from the appropriate partners that we want inside of the fashion industry, but also to have a public service element. And we're deeply active in Washington. I'm on the American Sustainable Business Council, and to try to promote policy from within our organization and kind of live what we're trying to promote. This is a new announcement which I'm very excited about from a technology angle. The U.S. is reclaiming its textile industry and trying to drive that forward into innovation. Yay! So I'm going to do all I can to carve out this. And I think all of this comes down to, this is a quote from a dear friend of mine, unless you can articulate the fundamental social value of your organization, you haven't uncovered the reason it needs to exist. So we're driven by all these social metrics, but how do we start to kind of analyze them? So we can do it in numbers. We're creating jobs, which is a huge thing. We have a workforce training program, which we're putting into place. We've helped foster 40 new Made in New York City brands that are now off and running. And we did a pilot program of the Incubator already. So there's a lot of kind of metrics here, but I think really this is primarily about community. I'm just going to show you some of the work of some of our designers in our first class. They're very special, kind of edgy people who are willing to take a risk with us. This is Tilly and William, she does these amazing transformable garments and looking at kind of new models of dressing for androgyny and trans, and just a kind of beautiful, sustainably sourced lycras and spandex. This is reclaimed lace into couture gowns and wedding from Mimi. This is a really interesting hybrid combination of sort of laser cutting and using new technologies and new models of casting. Bont and Sol, Vaz, they work with different sustainable collectives in South America and then do half the manufacturing there and half here. And then this is a story, this one is great. This ties into the workforce training idea where this is Ron Wallace, who's actually our executive assistant. And he showed up at Manufacturing New York in 2013. He wanted to do some screen print, some t-shirts. He had some idea for some graphics. And he now has this beautiful menswear line. It is exquisite. He learned everything in our place. He's traded basically a space in the incubator class for being our assistant. He's an amazing assistant, but I am totally going to lose him because of this line. So I think that this is within 2 years. So I think it's a really kind of a testament to what can happen when you put people in front of people with the skill sets in front of the right place. Outside of the people, the whole building is going to run off has a system of sustainability metrics. Where we're trying to prove that sustainability does not have to be at odds with technology. We're using SourceMap, which is basically a mapping platform, transparent supply chain, everything that goes into the building, everything that goes out, and using kind of vertical integration inside between all the factories to figure out these metrics. I'm not in charge of this. It's an amazing kind of operations puzzle and very much a social economic experiment inside of the building. And part of this comes from combining traditional manufacturing with innovative industrial machines and processes. So, for instance, this is a very new sustainable printer called AM4U, which is zero water and cuts the time by about 1/10. It's just we're having the second instantiation of this new technology in our building. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about tech. I know I'm out of time and I'm nowhere near finished. But so the biggest issue that I've seen when we think about the future of wearables is how does the technology and fashion industries talk to each other? And this is an example of, I was on a panel, I think this was like over a year ago now, with someone from MC10, which is the thing you see on the left, which is a stretchable circuit. It's like a Band-Aid. It's an amazing technology. And he was explaining how it worked, and he's like, yeah, he's driving the IP around this curvy line, and I said, oh, like zigzag stitch. Like that's what it allows it to stretch. And he's like, what? And I pulled out my skirt and was like showing him like this idea that he had never seen. There was no correlation between how zigzag stitch worked and how the stretch worked in a circuit. It was just a sort of missing link between the design languages. And then secondary, think about things like this. So this is a product called Digital Dress Barbie, which I'm pretty sure is based on a cute circuit, their Twitter dress and the design of these kind of interactive garments. This is the low power indicator, and this is sort of my favorite product fail. It's like when UX, UI does not talk to product. But but it points out to me is something about the language of the body is very different. We're in an intimate space, and there's a lot of different things that fashion designers know all about, and that the rest of the kind of design community, and especially people who are making tech products, do not necessarily know. So we have to talk to each other. So what I'm setting up is this research facility, which does product development and projects, and I want it to be cross big companies. So we have tech companies coming in, we have startups that we incubate and take equity percentages, and we're very specifically working with academic labs because there's so many good ideas that are not being industrialized, and then bring this all together with new fashion labels as well, and combining manufacturing techniques. So we will have basically advanced digital fabrication, soft circuits and wearables, and biology and chemistry all together in one space, which is very important and new in terms of their interrelationships. So things that we can do, we're going to focus on multi-material composites and softness, as well as kind of hacking different things. Like this is having a knitting machine hackathon. This is a data visualization coming from a knitting machine directly from a Google feed. The soft circuits, the holy grail of flexible, stretchable, washable, trying to work on that, trying to work on conductive inks. And then biology, chemistry, and biofabrication for everything from just new sustainable materials all the way up through how do we have things grow things for us. Because I really think that biology is the next hardware revolution, and we have to be tapping into these forces of nature and combining them for new conductivity, because we're running out of metals. So the future of wearable tech, I could not give a talk about wearable tech this week without mentioning this. So this is obviously a very beautiful product. It's wonderfully made. I think it's fantastic, but I will never own this product. And that's basically the point being that once you cross the threshold of the body, fashion becomes about identity and personal expression. And Apple can market an iPhone to the same iPhone to a 70-year-old man as to a 14-year-old girl, and they can both kind of incorporate that into their lives. But once it crosses onto the body, it takes on a different identity, and this is not my identity. Now, oh, I forgot to show you, this is where we came from. So obviously we've come a long way. But the point being that this is the wearable that I wear every day. I'm wearing it now, single bit of information, beautiful notification, not supposed to do more than it is trying to do. So this is something that appeals to me. So this is about the diversity inside of wearables. This is something else that I would wear. I don't own it yet, but this appeals to me for its materiality and the way that it conveys information. So the market needs more diversity, ways for people to express themselves, different populations. Where is the wearable for my mother that is an activation device if she falls down? It's a beautiful brooch. These kinds of things. There's massive amounts of opportunities inside of that space. But the other thing that's going on is that everybody is competing for the architecture of the wrist. This is a data scientist from Misfit. She actually wears this as kind of part of her identity. She collects from all these things. So what I'm saying is the tech industry can have the wrist, go claim it, go wild. I want to take back the rest of the body and see what we can do with the rest of the body. In order to do this, we have to move into fiber science. And so, this may be where everyone was like last Friday trying this on, going crazy in the Apple Store. This is where I was, in the basement in a lab in Princeton. And what this is a revolution. This is the biggest thing in wearables, I think. This is basically printing fiber batteries. It's embedding different kinds of chemical technologies into the fibers, this crazy hack here. And what you see coming out are two filaments that are then twined together that can create power. This is Dan Steingart, the professor there, and those are the two filaments. And basically, the reason this is so amazing is not only has he created, basically your shirt can be woven into a battery in itself, not only is this washable, it needs to be washed. When you wash it, the fibers are encased in an aqueous agar solution, which is like biological jello. And the salt in your detergent creates a pH disbalance. The water rushes back in and basically restores your battery as if it was never used. It's this amazing reverse engineering. And this will be inside the textile. So what was interesting is these guys were using this micron, carbon, fiber, whatever. And I asked them why, as the base. They're like, oh, it's the easiest thing to get. Because this is a material science lab. This is what I had around. So I'm now working with them about getting them some yarn and thread and, and teaching them to weave like this. But on Friday, what we did was, go take the nerd herd from Princeton and go 10 miles across New Jersey to the 3D knitting machine factory of Shimoseki and to start to really work with how do we turn this into a real product? If this is a battery, what can we put in the machine? How do we construct the weave? How do we work on the software? And just really kind of real cross-fertilization between industries. So really. So these kinds of things, embedding, this is conductive glove. So this is the difference between moving from there to there and then moving into real fibers. And then the last piece I'll show you, does anybody know what this is? This has nothing to do with your body. This is a shank that's in the inside of your shoe, right? It has absolutely nothing to do with your body. It's literally medieval in material and process. So I'm working with another company called Thesis Couture, which is redesigning the high heel from the inside out this is astronaut Garrett Reisman, who's on our team, advanced polymer science, all different kinds of mechie and structural engineering. And I'll let Dolly tell you this. Somebody play the video, and that's it.
High heels have been the same for about 200 years, and when you rip apart the inside of your shoes, essentially your entire body is resting on a flat metal plate. What we ended up with was an advanced polymer shank, so this is like a ballistic grade plastic where it's super strong, and the shape also does a lot as it relates to distributing the load of your body across the structure itself. And then everything you see around that is what's called the TPU. It's a thermoplastic urethane, sort of similar to what tires are made out of. It's a huge difference. That's really what's most important about our design, and then everything else built around that.
So with our orthopedic surgeon, this is how we created this, between engineering. Basically, there's only one person on the team who's ever worked on shoes before, and that's kind of the point. So these are launching in 2 weeks. Yeah, so I'll just end with this, a quote from The Nation, talking about how do we really kind of move New York City into a kind of 21st century urban industrial revolution, and how the fashion industry can be a kind of a place to start this off.